And tonight we'll share some teachings of Swami Sivananda from this wonderful book called How to Cultivate Virtues and Eradicate Vices. Here in this book, Master Sivananda gives lots of inspiration on different types of practices, different types of virtues to cultivate, like cheerfulness and courage and compassion and gratitude, forgiveness, many beautiful and inspiring practices, and different vices to overcome, like anger and jealousy and greed. So a wonderful book to have, very inspiring. Actually, Swami Sivananda recommends for each month of the year to have a different virtue to focus on. So to cultivate for each month one virtue. Anybody knows what Swami Sivananda recommends for the month of June? Yes, Radha, you know? What is it? Magnanimity. So actually for the month of June, Swami Sivananda recommends this wonderful virtue of magnanimity, which Master Sivananda was an incredible embodiment of magnanimity. He explains that magnanimity means the largeness of heart, or it's a synonymous word really for generosity, the capacity to be larger than life, that admits different challenges and difficulties, to be ever giving, ever generous. This is the virtue of magnanimity. But what we actually wanted to share a little bit tonight is about a different virtue, and this is the virtue of regularity and punctuality. This is very much in relation to what Swami Paramananda ji was sharing with us the last few days about how to stay on the spiritual path. And this is really what we call abhyasa, or steady practice, which Swami Sivananda here refers to as regularity and punctuality. Really, all these virtues that are listed here are wonderful practices. And the yogis explain that these virtues are really the essence of positive thinking. To cultivate positive thinking really means this cultivation of virtues. And the yogis explain that this is the foundation of our spiritual maturity, meaning our spiritual evolution is manifested in our capacity to practice virtue in everyday life, that our capacity to grow in the understanding of our true self, our capacity to understand the true nature of this world and reality, is based on this foundation of virtues. Virtues is preparing the mind to be able to perceive the oneself in all. It's the lack of virtue, the anger, the jealousy, the greed, the different types of vices, they are ever keeping us locked in delusion. They're always keeping us away from the capacity to know the truth about ourselves and this world. So the virtues is really are things to be practiced in everyday life to prepare the mind to perceive the one divinity that dwells in all. So very important part of our spiritual journey. So tonight we wanted to share a little bit about this regularity and punctuality. Now Swami Sivananda explains that this abhyasa, or regularity, is really the key for success in life in all fields. If one wants to become a great athlete, or even not great, just so-so athlete, even if it's just the average, that's okay. That's also fine. But the idea is that if we want to progress from wherever we are now, we need to do whatever we do regularly. Meaning, if we want to achieve any type of physical fitness, this has to be done by some regular physical exercise. If we don't practice regularly, there will be not much benefits. If we want to study anything, we need to study regularly, systematically. Anything that we would like to be good at, we need to train regularly. So in the same way, on the spiritual path, if we want to evolve, we need to practice regularly. That is where the benefits will come from. So Actually, Swami Shivananda explains, or the great yogis teach, that there is 4 main things or 4 steps in our capacity to be established in regularity. If we want to be regular in our sadhana, in our spiritual practice, there's 4 really main steps about how to achieve this capacity of being consistent and being dedicated. So the first thing, in order to be capable of practicing regularly, is that we need to be inspired. If we want to actually go to the yoga mat every day, if we want to study every day or sit for meditation every day, first and foremost we need to be inspired. If we're not inspired, there wouldn't be the ability to do the practice. And the more that we are inspired, the more regularity will be natural. We will be excited. We will be enthusiastic about it. So the first and foremost, if we want to be regular, we need to be inspired. And there's many different ways of how we can cultivate inspiration, but one basic thing is to study about it. And this is what we'll be sharing tonight, a little bit the words of Swami Shivananda for the sake of getting the inspiration. If we want to be regular, we need to be inspired to be regular. And that comes from reading, which basically means to understand the value in it. We need to, the mind has to be clear why it's beneficial to be regular. The more that it's clear, the more that we will become regular. That is the idea. So the first step is to be inspired. Second thing is that we need to be committed. So it's not enough just to be inspired, but there needs to be a growth in our commitment, meaning we have to take it seriously. And this is where the yogis explain that we set for ourselves some routine. We write it down. We take resolves. We have a plan of how we're going to do it. So meaning if we want to be regular, not just to be inspired, we need to plan what we're going to be regular at. Like, I'm going to be regular in my meditation. I'm going to be regular at my wake-up time. I'm going to be regular at my sleep time. These are all very important. So we plan a few things that we're going to be regular, and we plan the time. Like, I will wake up at 5:30. I will do my asanas at 8 o'clock. Or like this, we set a plan. So we are inspired, and then we are also committed. There is some kind of a plan about it. After that, if we want to be successful in being regular, we also need to have what we call self-analysis. So meaning, after we have the plan, we have the self-analysis, which means that every night before we go to sleep, we have to look if I was regular and punctual today. Meaning, if we are now inspired to be punctual, that we're going to go to eat at the same time. Very important for good digestion, to go to eat at the same time. I'm going to study at the same time. So we look at the end of the day, how did the day go in relation to my plan of being punctual? Was I able to practice at the plan at the time that I was planning? Was I punctual in my meditation? And was I punctual in all my doings? If I had a meeting, did I come on time? If I had some phone call or something, was punctual, or was I punctual in all my doings? And if not, we have to do something about it. So, but the first thing is that we need to recognize it. So this is what Swami Shivananda would recommend. At night, when you have this type of a self-analysis, you review the day in relation to the virtue that you're trying to cultivate, and you see how did you do. So if you are planning on cultivating punctuality, was I punctual in all things? And if not, then the last step, this is the fourth step, is what Swami Shivananda calls self-punishment. Now, self-punishment is a bit harsh sounding, but it means self-correction. Basically, there should be some type of repercussions or accountability to the fact that we failed in our resolutions in our plan. So, for example, we can be, because we noticed, we did our self-analysis, we saw I was late 5 minutes to a meeting. Then we take this resolution that because of that, I'm going to repeat a few extra malas of japa, or I'm going to give up chocolate for a week. Very difficult. But there needs to be some type of repercussions. I can share with you that in the army, there are great masters and showing to you the repercussions of being late. They are excellent in training you to be always punctual. Basically, if you're coming to something late, what the officer would do, he would say, "Swami, come here." And there's not many Swamis in the army, but just in case, say, "Swami, come here." And they would say, "You see that top of the mountain? Open your watch. 10 minutes, you touch it and come back." Now, of course, there's no way you can do it in less than an hour. But they still give you something like that, and you have to run as fast as you can. If you see that they're slacking, they would give you even more. But then when you come back after 1 hour and it's not 10 minutes, then they would say in Hebrew, shne. Shne means like do again, from shenit. So you come back, you don't make it on time, they just say shne, and you have to go up again, and then again. After sometimes they don't even say anything, they just kind of and you just keep on going all night because you missed, like you were late for 2 minutes. Then there's no way that if that officer is around, that you're going to be late again, because you know what that will entail. That's one very effective method. But another method that can be used in the army, even more powerful, is in case you are late, the whole unit has to run up and forth because of you. That's a big problem. Then you don't know what is waiting for you afterwards. But so this is how the training, which is basically training of the mind to understand that if you are going to be late, there's going to be repercussions. Then the mind will learn to not be late. That is the idea. So in the spiritual path, also Swami Sivananda recommends the system that if we fail, like fail in punctuality, if we are able to apply some type of positive repercussions, something that requires some effort on our part, the mind will think twice before failing again, because it will understand that there's going to be consequences to it. So these are really the steps for cultivating regularity and punctuality. We have to be inspired about being regular and punctual. We have to have a plan of when are we going to apply our punctuality and regularity, some set routine and things to strive to be a time about. And then there should be some introspection, regular introspection, to see when we're failing. So we acknowledge it, and then some self-corrections set in place. So what we'll share tonight, just a few words, and perhaps we can share more at a different time, just a few words of Swami Sivananda about this practice of regularity and punctuality. So Swamiji writes, "No man can reasonably expect success in life and God realization if he does not possess these two qualifications, regularity and punctuality. Perfect discipline can only be maintained by regularity and punctuality." These are really the essence of discipline, of doing something consistently and being on time, which is really a training of the discipline, training of focus and willpower, and which basically means it's a certain degree of mastery over the mind, because the mind is the culprit that takes us away off of the regularity and the punctuality. So by that capacity to be regular and punctual, we are learning how to do what needs to be done, regardless if the mind likes it or doesn't like it. And this is the mastery over the mind. The mind may say, "Oh, let me do something else instead. Let me forget about the practice for today, or it's okay, let me just come a few minutes late. But this type of a training is to whatever the mind says, to be able to be committed. And like this we overcome the likes and the dislikes. So Swamiji says, perfect discipline can only be maintained by regularity and punctuality. There cannot be any success without discipline. Discipline is an enemy of the mind. Enemy of the mind in the sense that the mind will be transformed due to the discipline. The old ways will not be able to persist due to the discipline. The mind is very terribly afraid when it hears the terms discipline, regularity, tapas, which means austerity, vairagya, non-attachment, renunciation, and sadhana, etc. So all these things are very frightening for the mind initially. After a while, we learn to love these terms. These are the most inspiring things for the mind that is keen on sadhana, when we understand the value in them. So man evolves quickly by regular practices. He who meditates regularly gets samadhi quickly, or superconscious state. He gets the meditative mood easily without any exertion. So if there is a real commitment, the benefits will be there. He who does physical exercise regularly gets rapid development of the body. That man who is irregular and does his actions by fits and starts cannot reap the fruits of his efforts. So the regularity is the key. So Master says about himself very beautifully, the one important qualification that gave success in my life is this important virtue, punctuality. So Master was known always to be a few minutes early and he had a very, very busy full day and always being punctual. Even Europeans used to admire my punctuality, because in India there's a whole, we're not reading it tonight, but there's a whole section here Swami Sivananda makes fun and criticizes, it calls Indian time, where in India, sometimes there could be a scenario where people are a little bit late when you're going on the train and you're expecting the train to leave at 5 p.m. and you come and it's 5 p.m., no train around, and you ask and they say, no, it's okay, just have some chai. The train will come. Same thing with the airlines. It can be several hours in the airport. So Swami Sivananda talks about this, that this is a real big mistake to be lacking punctuality. So he says, the one important qualification that gave success in my life is this important virtue, punctuality. I used to be very punctual wherever there was appointment. It produced a great impression. I never missed trains. I was always punctual at the station, where the train there is late, so it's okay. An unpunctual man misses always his trains. He fails in his business. He loses all his customers. The professor dislikes students who are unpunctual. If a man fails to attend the courts punctually, of course he will lose his case. So in all worldly affairs, punctuality is key. Have regular habits in all walks of life. Be regular in going to bed and in rising up early in the morning. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Be very regular in your meals always. Be regular in your studies, in your physical exercise, in your meditation, etc. And you will have a very successful life, and a happy one too. Regularity should be your watchword. Om Tat Sat. So of course this is something that we all are striving to develop to a greater capacity, greater ability. So it's a wonderful teaching you can find from this book, How to Cultivate Virtues and Eradicate Vices.